first time in my life I'm truly free to see the clear-cut forest for the poison sea, to see the waters occupy the shores of Jersey, and I feel alive.
All right, welcome to another fun episode of Calfire Crackpots, possibly the last episode,
Yeah, what?
in case we get drafted.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Kind of forgot about
Calfire
that part.
Crackpots reporting from live in Ukraine.
Live from
Situation
Kiev.
live from Kyiv. Situation is that we have hijacked a Russian tank and are heading for the Polish border.
Mhm.
Oh my god, this is weird because it's the one antagonistic like invasion by an imperialist country in our lifetimes that wasn't caused by the US.
Yeah.
That's
It's
why this is such a familiar out of body experience, but
so familiar, and yet something's missing.
yeah. Something is missing. America is missing. I'm gonna just cut to the chase. We're talking about climate change denialism, but let's get to the news because that's probably what we're gonna be talking about for a while. A couple news items. I'm just gonna start with this one. So, the governor of Texas signed into law something that, so just to back up, all teachers in pretty much the United States are required by law that if they suspect that there's child abuse going on, or that if they have probable cause that a student is about to hurt themselves or others, they are required by law to report that. Now, Texas has extended that to if the kid is trans, they need to report that as child abuse.
I wouldn't expect anything less from Texas.
I am beyond disgusted. This is probably the most insane use of legislation that was totally done intentionally right when everyone was distracted with Ukraine. It was the day of the invasion.
Oh my god, this always happens. This literally always happens. Remember, what was it, a year or two ago when all the Democrats left Congress on 9/11 as like sort of like a moment of silence kind of thing, and then the Republicans passed a bill intermittently.
I don't know
God.
why you would, as a socially conscious individual, would move to or continue to live in Texas. I honestly don't know. And the governorship campaign for Texas right now is someone who's like saying Greg Abbott isn't a real conservative. Like
Yeah.
what else do you want him to do?
How more
Do
real
you
of a
want this
conservative can you get?
Do you want this Onion article to be real? Because the way I'm seeing it, it's not that far from the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
we have trans representation on this podcast, and this is the most disgusting thing I've seen this week. And I've seen a lot of disgusting things this week. So I had to update the next Friday. The next Friday meme.
Yeah.
It's next Friday. We are recording this at 6:36 on Sunday, February 27th, and as of now, I don't know why you would get your news from a podcast, but as we're recording this, just so you know, Kyiv is surrounded and Russia has put its nuclear arsenal on alert in response to NATO troop buildups on the Polish border. It's just sad.
Nothing
If a
has
nuclear war
happened
is going to
yet,
happen,
but
this would be the stupidest way for it to start.
it would
It's not
be.
over. It's not over any highbrow humanitarian goals. It's not over any big resource grabs. It's over a territorial squabble with politics from 40 years ago.
I always thought that World War III would start as a result of some sort of counter protest for a genocidal nations effort thing. So,
Well,
think of like what happened in Yemen, what's happening in China. That kind of feels like a natural leeway into a third world war,
this
because
is not the way I would have expected World
this
War
is
III
not the
to
way I would
start.
have expected it, because it really does just boil down to Putin wants Ukraine.
Yeah, well, or at the very least, he wants Ukraine to be uh, non-aligned.
Yeah.
Well, there's a delegation meeting in Belarus, well, the border of Ukraine and Belarus tomorrow to try to negotiate a ceasefire. Um, I have seen more war crimes than I can count on my fingers and toes over the past 2 days on video. I've seen Russian tanks going out of their way to run over cars. I've seen Russians shooting at cars. And I've also seen a fair number of dead Russians.
It's not
Kind of.
even a war where there's a justifiable way to support Russia. No matter which perspective you approach it from, there's no legitimate reason to support Russia.
And I made these slides Thursday, so that was when the invasion was getting underway. I updated the news slide like yesterday, and in AP US history right now, we're discussing World War II, the lead up to it, what caused it, how you know what
And the
Germany was
Sudetenland.
doing. So the Sudetenland is this part of Czechoslovakia here, which was at the time mostly predominantly German speaking and had a German culture, but it was still part of Czechoslovakia. So at this point, Hitler had already annexed Austria, and France and Britain were in no position to start a war. The people were tired after World War One. They wanted to just say, you know what, like we'll give them that little part of Czechoslovakia. That'll be the end of it. If we just give them that part of land, they'll stop grabbing land. So they chose appeasement, and they gave him the Sudetenland, and then they took all of Czechoslovakia, then Poland, and then all of fucking Europe. It's just there's no end to an imperialism until you get whacked in the head. I think with the U.S. the U.S.'s imperialism came to a head probably in like around Vietnam when just we lost so hopelessly that we were kind of knocked down a few pegs, and that hasn't really happened with Russia yet.
Yeah,
And
the domino theory that brought us into Vietnam existed out of the idea that America could fight a war and win at any given moment, and that they ought to fight a war and win in order to simply spread ideals or to stamp out those that go against their ideals.
this was the Vietnam and Korean War and all of those Cold War proxy battles were at least for something. It was for the belief that an ideology would give people in other countries a better life versus the ideology that someone else wanted to push there. I'm not going to get into the politics of communism versus capitalism. I'm just going to say that it was fought on the pretense that they were doing the right thing.
Yeah, and this
This I don't even see it.
it's in this war it's fought under the pretense that going to war is the right thing, which is far different than they're doing the right thing.
It's I don't know what's gonna happen. I honestly have some uh, like I honestly usually have predictions on this, but I don't know.
If I
I
had to
could I
guess, um, the way things are right now at this exact moment, uh, Russia will probably become resource deprived as a result of most developed nations saying this won't fly, Russia, and then following that, that doesn't mean that the conflict would necessarily end, but it does mean that more counter resistance would be felt.
so Russia's economy is basically completely shut off. They are cut out of most of their banks are cut out of transferring money with other countries. Um, Inflation in Russia is going crazy. There's runs on banks. Visa and Mastercard will no longer be accepting payments in Russia after today. Um, a lot of internet service is down for them. Pornhub is down for them.
Yeah,
Um,
and one Russian ruble is worth less than one Roebuck.
yeah, but it's been like that for a while, to be fair.
Yeah,
It, Russia hasn't really had the best economy, but like basically they're not importing anything, they're not exporting anything, and I fully expect that Russia intended for this to happen. Um, I there's smart boys and girls in Russian military command, and I fully expect that they did this kind of thinking this would happen. And I don't know what they have going on with China, but I know it's probably something.
Yeah.
They I this is just crazy.
It's
I'd
beyond
been
belief.
following this since December and I was like, one does not simply put 200,000 troops on a border of a country which you had a war with 8 years ago without the intention to use them. And there were
Yeah.
people coping saying like they were just peacekeeping. I'm like,
Peacekeeping from what?
what do you have 200,000 troops on the border for? Like,
That's not
what do
peacekeeping numbers. That's like those are rallying war effort numbers.
and Russia and I think it's really funny that Russia's losing this because
Yeah.
it's in my eyes because of two reasons. One is because Russia's a big country. It has a lot of things going on. It has its economy to manage. It's got all the other wars that it's involved in. It's got to manage. This is just one facet of that. For Ukraine, this is their everything. And also, if you really want to break the spirit of a country, you need to just I'm going to quote Donald Trump in his campaign path in his 2016 campaign, bomb the shit out of him. Like, you need to shell the city day and night, like just complete total war campaign if you want to break the spirit of your enemy. And they haven't done that. It's been kind of send some people in to try to get like it cleared for big artillery, and they get mowed down. And it's something like at least 5,000 Russians have been killed for Ukraine's like few hundred.
Yeah.
That's either showing Russia's incompetence or Ukraine's devotion. I don't know. We'll keep coming back to this. There's not really much more I want to say on this news topic. Greg Abbott, actually get fucked. If you're listening from Texas, why are you still here? Like, why are you still there? I actually want to get the opinion of someone who lives in Texas. Why you live in Texas? It is a terrible state with terrible policies, and their only policy seems to just be making fun of other people trying to make a difference. And it's your power grid basically collapsed last year. If so, I read a lot of the investigation report of what happened. Now, the electric grid needs to stay at 60 hertz. Otherwise, really bad things happen. And all the electric grid interconnects in North America are programmed such that if the whole grid frequency falls below 60 hertz by a certain margin, the entire grid will shut down, and it takes weeks to get it back up. That was about 3 minutes away from happening. If the frequency fell below 60 hertz for only 3 more minutes, a lot more people would have died. And what has your state done to upgrade the electric grid to protect against cold snaps that are becoming far more common? Jack shit.
The issue is that they'd rather cope with this idea of perceived independence and have an arbitrarily separated power grid and go and say that the 50-year snowstorm that's happened 2 years in a
Happen for
row
another 50 years.
won't happen for
Texas
another
will be
50
dead by then.
years, and then have the audacity to say that there's nothing to
California
fix.
sucks. Their electricity grid is bad. And it's like, at
Oh,
least
you have
they're
to wait
trying.
you have to wait 8 hours in line for the hospital because you have public health care. Like, okay, you don't have a hospital because everything's shut off because the power grid froze over. Like,
Okay, at least California is experiencing the growing pains of transitioning to a fully renewable grid, and those will work themselves out over time. But no, you'd rather just let your people freeze to death. I just want to say, Greg Abbott talks mad shit for someone who could literally be tipped out of his wheelchair and be completely helpless.
ooh, is that the next episode of CC? Is that going to be us traveling down to Austin, finding him at a campaign rally, and then just tipping him out of his wheelchair
That would be
and getting
best.
accosted by state police.
That would be the best way to get arrested. But a couple more things. Let's talk draft evasion policies. What's our draft evasion policy?
Be gay and Canadian.
Well, no, that won't work because we have a Democrat in office.
Oh
That's not good
shoot,
enough.
yeah, be Canadian.
Yeah, the Democrat. Well, no, because Canada has an extradition agreement with the U.S.
Be Mexican.
Let me look up countries with extradition treaty with U.S. So that would be Mexico has one. You'll have to go to Africa. All of North and South America, all of Europe. You could go to China or you could go to Russia. Ukraine doesn't
Let's
have
see.
one, so you could go
Oh.
there. Really, you'd have to go to Africa,
Let's see what else we've got.
or you
Oh.
probably won't even.
Oh hey, the
You prob-
Maldives. That's nice.
You know what? You probably wouldn't even need to go far. I'm sure just live in the woods.
What do you think about Nepal? I heard they're one of the happiest nations.
Yeah, it's not. It's not in a good. It's not a good geographic position.
Cambodia.
My strategy, just get really fat, like just like my 600-pound life, like mega obese. It's like, sorry, I can't even hold a gun. Like,
Would you rather live in Belarus or shoot off 2 of your toes and dodge the draft?
2 of my toes.
Yeah.
I'd go with all of them because like I could get like prosthetic toes to help with balance and everything, and I could just wear closed-toed shoes all the time. There are very few things that I wouldn't do to avoid going to Belarus.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to kill. I don't want to die. Is
You
that such an unpatriotic notion? I don't want to kill people. I don't want to die. It's like we're all people.
Yeah.
And I'll bet that those poor people in Russian uniforms want to be there is just as little as the Ukrainians do fighting. It's an autocracy. Everyone's afraid of the person above them.
Of course.
And it's just I watched this video of Putin's senior spy, like director of like whatever spy association they have, standing up to Putin, and just the fear in this man's voice and the way Putin reacted to it. I'm like, this man isn't alive anymore.
Yeah.
Like, and if Putin's like probably one of his like equivalent of cabinet members was that afraid, and rightly so, you have an autocracy, you have a dictatorship, and it's I don't know. There's nothing I can even say that hasn't been said. Watch the news. This is probably going to be outdated before we even finish this recording. Just watch the news. Stay safe. Let's move on. So, people. They're weird.
Honest to God, people are sometimes the worst.
Dude, on jaw, all right? People are really grinding my gears.
Baby.
Oh, yes, on. Moving on. All right, so we got climate grief. There's 7 stages of grief. So you got shock. So that's you're like, heavens. You hear the noise, you hear the news, and then denial, trying to avoid the inevitable. So that's like saying like, hell no, that ain't true. Anger, you're pissed. Bargaining, you're trying to like find a way out of it. And then depression, you're all sad. And then testing, which I didn't quite understand, but that's you're trying to find like solutions to it. And then acceptance is
Yeah, I think testing is like a more healthy version of the coping that you see before it.
Yeah, I think that's trying to get to acceptance. But this is actually a pretty good model for grief. And what I find with climate change is if you're cool, you usually end up about here. And this is probably where you stay because acceptance is bullshit. Like you can't that's not climate change. This is
That's
where you
that's
want to
that's
stay.
just full embracement of climate change, which is anything but healthy.
Yeah, so the testing part's where you want to be. Where people tend to get stuck is either in denial or bargaining. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So there's many different flavors of climate change denial, and the first one is just straight up denial of science. Did I spell science right?
Yeah,
SCIENCE.
you did.
I did. All right, so this is the 5 camps of science denial, which I found is really fun. So there's a few that I find that I find most common when I'm talking with people who are denying climate change. So the first would be bulk fake experts. So that's quoting people who have qualifications that don't exist. That's the great global warming swindle. It's people who on the surface seem to have all these like doctorates and are in universities with press contacts, but that either they aren't or it's crap.
Yeah.
And then impossible expectations, that's lowering your expectations in terms of saying that the 1.5 degree benchmark doesn't matter. It's all arbitrary. And then conspiracy theories, we got a few in there. So something must be wrong. Like this is impossible. That's the camp of it was cold today, so there's no climate change. Or you're just immune to evidence. People just deny whatever is in front of them. That's
Yeah.
that's science denial. And then there's anecdotal denial. We got some so you have any stories about anecdotal denial?
Anecdotal denial is a very interesting one because, in terms of real evidence, you have a sample size. It's just one. Anyone who
Yeah,
knows anything about stats knows that having a sample size of one is just about the worst you could have.
and I don't know
Um,
anything about stats, and I still think it's bad.
yeah, it's just it's common sense, and people who don't go out of their own closed circle and don't talk to anyone except like-minded individuals and don't associate their beliefs with anything other than the same two news sources are going to end up forming a set of beliefs that are very hard to shake.
Yeah, that's why I
And
find. Oh, go ahead.
the problem with that is anything that shakes those beliefs is going to be met with a pretty strong backlash, which is where anecdotal denial comes in.
And that's one of the most problematic things that I've found out with the internet. Is that in the 80s, let's say, I was like, I think that Jewish people control the world's financial systems and are responsible for every war, and just and blah blah blah, cause wildfires, everything. Everyone would say, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I'd be socially berated, and then that'd be the
Yeah,
end of it. I'd be normal.
there might be an
But
even
now,
crazier guy somewhere that thinks the same thing, but you'll never
no,
talk to him.
yeah, you'll never know who he is. But then, if you have that same belief now, you can find a whole community of hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world who believe the same exact thing. Most of them probably worse than you, who are going to radicalize you. And then the people in the real world who tell you off, who you would have taken their word at face value, you're now like, oh, they're in on it, or something equivalent. You have your
Yeah,
circle of people who are just, it's a circle jerk of reinforcing your beliefs, your echo chamber. There's no discourse. That's why I encourage people to immerse themselves in situations in which you're the only one with a certain belief, because it'll either put a check on that belief or it'll help you to put it into perspective as to how popular it really is. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but I found myself disagreeing with people a lot more than I agree with people on a whole host of issues.
agreed.
And I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy to have your circles online where you have like-minded people. Again, this is assuming that your beliefs are trans people should have human rights and not like something racist. Um, but like if your belief is healthy and good, but it's not something that's held in the collective consciousness, it's healthy to have those circles of people who mostly agree with you. But for that to be your only circle is kind of dangerous.
Yeah, challenge your beliefs, but ensure that your beliefs are also justifiable.
Yes.
Find
Don't be
sources to back
stupid.
up your beliefs, but if you can't find sources, maybe that has some implication on your beliefs.
Something might be wrong. Don't get crazy, otherwise you may find yourself pooping on Nancy Pelosi's desk.
You better start believing in crazy people, considering you are one.
You better start believing in crazy people, seeing as you watch a long format leftist podcast about climate change made by two high schoolers.
Yep.
Anyway, so this is an interesting graph. It's from Carbon Brief, and it was asking some people in Britain. I guess 2010 was a unusually cold winter in Britain, and they just asked people on the street, "Does this mean climate change isn't happening?" So, um, not many people agreed. I guess kind of good. Looks like a bit less than a quarter, but maybe about 20% of people agreed with them. And most people were like, no, that's BS. And in 2010, I'm a little surprised.
Yeah.
Like 2010 is almost like 2010 climate change was still kind of a fringe thing. Like that most of these protests back here are from Obama's first term.
Yeah.
That was when climate change was still extremely unpopular. Just in terms of coal was still pretty widely held, and really there weren't too many major effects of climate change, or if there were, like stuff like Katrina, it was less attributed to it.
Climate change was an issue, and it was something that was documented in a possible trend. I mean, there have been studies conducted by the government about similar issues all the way back to the Carter presidency, and the issue was no one really cared at that point. There were
It's
people that
it,
did, but there was no Greta Thunbergs. There was no people that were bringing it into actual mainstream light.
it's in the same vein now. Is I said to you, the sun is gonna make the Earth not able to support life in 4 billion years. So I don't know if it's 4 billion. It's
It's
in the
like
order
it's
of
a very
billions.
long time away.
It's in the order of billions, and it's a little bit different. But I'm like, okay, yeah, eventually, I guess we're gonna need to find a way to find another planet and do that. But there's a war on right now. We got climate change to worry about. We got all this other crap to worry about. Let's leave that for later. That's what it was. That's what it was. Everyone was occupied with the recession at the time, so
Yeah, there was just a housing crisis that only was
whoops.
very starting to slow down, you know.
And then we got reverse science. This one's fun. This one is people using science, but in the wrong way. This isn't pseudoscience. This would be actual trends, but they're kind of putting them on
Misinterpretation
their
of
head.
data
Yep.
is a good way to say it.
So this would be, Earth's magnetic field. It wouldn't have much to do with climate change. It would mostly have to do with UV radiation. Um, Earth's magnetic poles are in the process of flipping. People don't really know what that's going to be. It could be kind of, you need to wear extra sunscreen in the summer, or oh my god, all of our appliances are going to die. I don't know. It's trending to be the former, but we'll see. Anyway, people are kind of turning that on their head to mean, oh, that's what's causing climate change. It's a scientific event that only happens once every 40, 50,000 years. That's got to be it.
It's a simpler way of explaining it off than the things you do have a tendency to emit carbon dioxide and other things into the atmosphere, which cause more solar energy to be absorbed, which you can't see or really even notice on a day to day scale, but have caused a long term, decades long trend towards hotter climates and more regular weather. But to the average person that's never seen a Doppler radar and that's never even understood what climatology or really any major form of science is, that's kind of a foreign concept.
Yeah, or it could be, I guess, kind of the foreign concept of scientific evidence. I think so. I read this book recently called The American Age of Unreason, and it was kind of, take it for what it is. It's kind of a snot-nosed, a little bit pompous book, but it was smartly written, and it was kind of about how um, the education system for the last two generations mostly being focused on facts and not really teaching people how to have discourse has made people such that their opinions are more based on emotion, and that's why it's called the age of unreason. It's because people's opinions are no longer focused on, well, I don't think they ever were, but as we're advancing as a society, we're still finding that the way we form our beliefs isn't changing.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate. And I'm hoping that more people out there kind of start to realize that you can't be run on emotion. You have all these different facets to your personality that need to be involved in socializing you politically, and they all need to be involved.
Yeah.
Anyway, then there's the identity politics. Who's this gentleman whose tie is loose?
Oh my god, I literally just watched a documentary on him. I'm going to lose my shit. Why don't I know his name?
He
Um,
what?
hold up.
Right.
Hold
Wait,
up.
wait, you talking about Joe Manchin or the ExxonMobil exec?
Uh, Joe Manchin.
Wow.
Look.
The key holder, the man who holds the golden ticket to the United States Senate. Ugh.
Ugh.
So when you're at the point where if you're a terrible human, or your entire livelihood depends on a certain industry, or you hold a certain set of political beliefs, it becomes easier to have that conflict of interest with climate change, in terms of, I'm going to make money if climate change it stays under wraps, so I'm going to go to that cordon. It's not really denial so much as it is making other people have denial.
Yeah.
But
It's like, is climate change a more important issue than keeping our miners in their jobs and in the dirty coal mines?
well, yeah, it's because a society without coal has zero use for people who know how to operate heavy machinery. No, but no, people, Silicon Valley would rather teach them to code.
Yeah.
No, we don't need heavy machinery operators, do we?
People fail to recognize that blue collar jobs will always exist everywhere there are jobs.
And I don't believe in the concept of unskilled labor. I think most desk jockeys wouldn't last like one night in a kitchen for dinner rush, and they wouldn't last 1 minute in a bike shop during the summer rush. So I think
That's
the whole concept of unskilled labor is kind of BS. But when it comes to labor that requires a college graduate, and my litmus test for what counts as blue collar versus white collar is, can your work be performed remotely? Like,
a
yeah,
pretty
it
good
may be
one.
inconvenient. It may be inconvenient to do it, but can it? If the answer is, well, the hell no, like that's antithetical to the job, well, then it's not. So there you go. And then my favorite flavor, the doomer, the fear
Ugh.
paralysis. That's that's getting stuck in shock. Sorry, depression. I mean, that's, you believe climate change is happening. You know it's happening. You're scared that it's happening. You just didn't get past the depression. You just thought there's nothing you could do, so you just want to sink into your depression. You may vote for Bernie, but you may support Bernie, but you don't go out on election day. You don't make your voice heard. You don't care. You care, but you don't care. And that's probably the second most unproductive to the climate crisis person. The first is, your Bible thumping, climate change denying Southerner, and then this guy.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. Don't be him. Then there's fear of change. So change is scary.
Change is
Change-
scary.
It's so scary. it's like climate change, whether we fix it soon or fix it by default when we're humanity likes population halves, um, is going to bring a lot of changes on society. It may bring about a socialist economic system. It may bring about a decentralized economy based on not having 2 hour shipping to your house. It may bring about an economy where people need to fix their own cars or need to make a phone last for a long day. It's going to bring about so many like different changes in humanity, and a lot of people are scared of it for any number of these reasons, either that they might not have a say in what that future is going to be, or it's unknown, it's upsetting to them, or that they fear the life that they might lose. There's a lot of things going on, and it's scary. It's scary to me, and it's scary to a lot of other people. But if you can accept that the change that climate change will bring about to humanity is a lot less scary than the change it'll bring about if we don't fix it, you can get along a lot better.
You have to pick change somewhere. You ought to pick positive change.
Absolutely. And then we just have the worst one. The worst.
Ugh, the
This
troll.
they want to watch the world burn, literally. If they can make that stupid meme format with the triggered liberal, like owned liberal, then they'll be happy. They're bad. They're terrible. Just don't engage with them. You're never going to convince them of anything. It's really unhelpful, and you'll waste a lot of emotional energy.
Yeah.
But I have had the pleasure of probably convincing many people that climate change is actually a problem. I'm going to say 50 or 60 times. And I've put together 5 ways, like 5 steps to convince someone that climate change is an issue. And this could work for pretty much anything. So start with graphs, start with data, start with showing, warming trends over time, but don't overdo it. If it's obvious that it's not working for them, if it's obvious that they're just denying or belittling you or saying, don't try to outsmart me or something, just don't. Because if you keep doing it, it's just going to make it worse.
It's not worth your time. You're radicalizing them. That's the
And
big thing. You're radicalizing them.
And then if that doesn't work, ask for their opinion. Ask what they think is happening. Ask, do they think that it's politics? Do they think that it's change? Do they actually think that it's happening? Are they using reverse science? Are they using anecdotal denial? Try to figure out, you need to know their ideology better than they do.
Yeah.
And then you need to make them realize the continuity of change. So if they travel a lot or if they've lived in one place for their entire life, you say, hey, have you noticed that this has changed over time? Or hey, have you noticed that the ice is on the lake for less and less time every year? Even if they don't admit it, it's forcing them to look at things that have happened. This is running off the assumption that they're usually older, by the way. This is it's kind of making them realize that, hey, this has kind of changed over time. What's up with that? And it might be one article they read on Fox News that's the only opinion they have on climate change, because it's maybe something that they're not super interested in. You just need to make them realize that something is happening. And then this is my favorite one. It's you need to appeal to their politics. So that's,
You got to
you
give
know,
in a little bit. You got to
it's-
ease them into it.
this is probably the most interesting one. So one of my favorite books is called Cooler Smarter. It's written by the Union of Concerned Scientists. It's a little older, but it's still useful. And some stuff it had in there is you should kind of, if they're more like right-wing conservative, you could say, hey, the transition to clean energy would help us, get off foreign oil. We wouldn't have to worry about the situation in the Middle East all the time. That works a lot. Or it could be like, it's our duty to make a world that's more equitable and sustainable and that nice to live in for our children and our grandchildren. So just stuff that's like, use words like duty or patriotic or You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I know where you're going with it.
Yeah. And then best rule, just be nice, offer an easy way out. Don't gloat. Don't say, "Well, I told you so," or "You're how could you not know this is happening?" That's just going to force people to different camps. Offer an easy way out. Don't be an asshole about it. This hasn't failed me yet. It's failed me. I'm sorry, it's failed me once, but that person was just
Beyond saving, yeah.
oh. Ugh. So that's my 5 steps. I guarantee it'll work most of the time. If it doesn't, you can come after me. Um, so they're dwindling numbers. Just take a look at this graph from New York Times. So you can kind of see that the amount of people who are concerned or alarmed about climate change as both the drought in California progressed and as the Trump administration came into office, it rose significantly to April in 2020, where most of the population, well, the lion's share of the population, over 60%, was either cautious, concerned, or alarmed about climate change.
Yeah, it's
Something like 7% were dismissive, and this is from almost 2 years ago, so it's definitely higher now.
it's very great to hear that people actually they don't just care, they're willing to do action.
Absolutely. And then this one is about adults who discuss global warming occasionally. This one's a little bit harder to conceptualize, but I think it's really interesting how, regardless of political stance, the further west you go, the more people talk about climate change.
Yeah.
It's in the Western U.S. is undeniably more affected by climate change than anywhere else in the United States. So it makes sense that they're talking about it more often. And then for the rest of the United States, it more so just follows um, red versus blue political maps.
I find it
And then,
interesting that there's also you can see small purple areas everywhere there's a major college.
well, everywhere there's a major city,
Yeah,
too.
but I feel like
Like there's U of I down there, and then it's a political map,
there are
right?
major cities, but there are also places where you really wouldn't think the city would be big enough to make a difference, like Durham, North Carolina. That's a like not very big city, but that's where Duke and
Okay,
UNC are.
that's actually really interesting. I didn't think of that when looking there. I was kind of more so focused on that, and like Texas, it's literally just Austin, and I don't know what's here.
El
It's
Paso.
over there. El Paso. Isn't that kind of like a one light like city?
I don't know.
Is there
Um,
any I'm
that
just checking a map real quick. That is that's not even El Paso. It's the first kind of bend of Texas.
really
That's Marfa, Texas.
Marfa, Texas.
I would
Who
have
knew they were so environmentally conscious?
um I don't know. There's not really reservoirs or dams. It's a one light town. uh huh. Okay. So Marfa, Texas, you friend of the show. Um okay, I can definitely see it. There's Eau Claire, kind of here in Wisconsin. That's where a bunch of UWs are. But it's so weird how like um Montana and Idaho, like the most like right-wing states in the western US, are have lots of discussion about climate change because it's more pervasive. Even kind of almost regardless of politics in the Rust Belt, which is the least affected by climate change in the country, in Chicago, Detroit, even Milwaukee, there's much less discussion about it. It's just a lot less pervasive in your life, and I think that's almost a better graph of how pervasive this is in your life.
Yeah.
I I I think it's super interesting how northern Texas, which has just been hammered by drought for almost the last 20 years continuously, still doesn't have much of a concern.
And
That
then
is
it also feels like places that are more historically environmentally conscious
Mhm.
have like higher disposition to be talking about climate change. Like Vermont and Colorado immediately come to mind.
Oh yeah.
And then the places that experience it more. So like you said, the further you go west, the more experience those people have with drought and extreme weather.
But like some of the most Republican areas of the country, like even if they're being hit hard by drought, at least in middle America, still no discussion. But some of the most conservative areas of California, and when I say conservative area of California, yeah, it is a conservative area. Like it's not like, oh, it's California, so they're still gonna be pretty liberal. No. Having had a first-hand experience with the lovely residents of northern rural California, I can tell you, they put Texas Bible thumpers to shame.
Yeah.
And the fact that they don't have a state legislature that supports them makes them even worse. But they talk about climate change too.
Yeah.
So, moral of the story, climate change denial, there's a lot of different ways about it, and especially all the stuff I was saying about trying to convince people about it. At the next holiday, just give your grandparents a shot. Just see if something can be done, because old people, for all of their, things that they can't really do, can still do a lot in terms of they have a good amount of money, and money can do a lot. So that's all for that. Next episode on Russia.
Yup. You love to hear it.
I am hyped for Modern Warfare 4. That's all I'm saying. I was raised on the Modern Warfare series. I'm excited. Let's get some.
Yeah.
The problem is the first 3 games were on Russia too, so it'll kind of get stale.
It gets stale, but it's fine.
Yeah, they kind of had a field day with continuous Middle East games for all of the 2010s. So let's go back to Russia. There were some fun missions in Modern Warfare 2. God, that was such a good game. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, Unfortunately, it's ruled by a dictator. We'll get into that, all that and more, next episode. Any shout-outs?
I'm gonna say not right now.
Shout
Can't
out
think of anything,
to
really.
the People's Army of Ukraine.
That is a good shout out.
Yes. And hold on. I'm just gonna check the news to see if our news segment is already outdated. I haven't seen any mushroom clouds to the north, so I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Nah, we're good for now.
Well,
Stay safe, everyone.
Don't be an
This
SS.
is on your back.
Don't be an
The point
SS.
of contention
Stay
is
around.
how they act. Where you draw the line will set you free. The debate is